Before you scroll past this video, I need you to stop for one moment, because what I'm about to tell you is not something I planned to say today. Something shifted the moment you clicked on this video, and if you are honest with yourself, you already know that someone close to you has not been feeling right lately, not wrong in an obvious way. Not someone who yells at you or hurts you in front of others. I'm talking about someone who smiles at you, who calls you their friend, who sits across from you at dinner, who texts you good morning, and yet every time you leave their presence, something in your spirit feels heavier than it did before. If that description just made your stomach tighten, do not look away from this screen, because God did not bring you here by accident. He brought you here because He is about to show you 3 signs, and the third one is the one almost nobody sees coming, until it is too late. Stay with me until the end, because I promise you, the way this video closes will change the way you see the people around you for the rest of your life. I know how strange it feels to hear someone you have never met speak as if they know exactly what is happening inside your life right now. You did not tell me about the tightness in your chest when you think about this person. You did not tell me about the nights you have lain awake replaying a conversation, trying to figure out why it left you feeling so uneasy even though nothing was technically said wrong. You did not tell me, and yet here we are, because this is not really about me knowing your story. This is about God knowing your story. And choosing this exact video, on this exact day, to begin peeling back the layers of something you have sensed for a long time, but never had the courage to fully name. There is a kind of warning that only comes when the timing is right, and this is one of those moments. You were not scrolling aimlessly tonight. Something inside you has been unsettled for days, maybe weeks, and you could not explain why. You have prayed about a decision and felt silence instead of peace. You have looked at a person you love and felt a strange caution rise up in your chest, and then you told yourself you were being paranoid, that you were overthinking things, that surely nothing is wrong with someone who has been so kind to you. But God does not give His children a spirit of fear. He gives discernment, and discernment often arrives quietly, like a whisper you almost miss, long before it arrives loudly, as a crisis you cannot ignore. Today is the day that whisper becomes a voice. Because God is not interested in watching you walk blindly into a wound He already tried to warn you about. I want you to understand something before we go any further. This message is not about turning you into someone who suspects everyone around them. It is not about cutting people off in fear or building walls so high that no one can reach you. That is not wisdom. That is wounding disguised as protection, and it will leave you more isolated than before. What God is offering you today is something far more valuable than suspicion. He is offering you sight. There is a difference between a person who sees danger everywhere and a person who has been given eyes to recognize the specific danger that has been circling their life for a season. You are about to become the second kind of person, and once you see clearly, you will never be able to unsee it again. The first sign is the one that fools almost everyone, because it does not look like danger at all. It looks like charm. There is a kind of person who has mastered the art of saying exactly what you need to hear in the exact moment you need to hear it. They compliment you when you're insecure. They agree with you when you're angry. They comfort you when you are grieving. And they do it so smoothly that you never stop to ask why their comfort always seems to come with a small request attached, or why their kindness always seems to leave you slightly smaller than before. This is not new. It is one of the oldest patterns in Scripture, described long ago as a wolf who comes to you wearing the softest wool, walking among the flock as if it belongs there, never raising its voice, never showing its teeth, simply waiting, watching, positioning itself close enough to the shepherd's most trusted sheep that no one thinks to question its presence. The wolf does not attack on the first day. The wolf builds trust first. It offers you exactly the version of itself that you are most likely to welcome in. And only after you have opened the door completely does its true nature begin to show, usually in small ways at first, a comment that stings just enough to make you doubt yourself, a favor that somehow always benefits them more than you. A pattern of showing up only when they need something, and disappearing the moment you need anything in return. Let me tell you about a woman I will call Naomi, because her story is one that so many of you will recognize a piece of yourselves inside of. Naomi had a close friend for almost 6 years, someone who had walked with her through a divorce, through the loss of her mother, through every hard season a person can face. On paper, this friendship looked unbreakable, but Naomi began to notice something strange. Every time something good happened in her life, a promotion, a new relationship, an answered prayer she had been waiting years for. Her friend's excitement always felt slightly delayed, slightly forced, as if she had to remind herself to be happy for Naomi instead of it coming naturally. And every time something painful happened, her friend arrived faster than anyone else, almost eager, always ready with comfort, that somehow always circled back to a story about her own suffering, her own struggles, her own need to be seen. Naomi ignored this feeling for years because the friendship had history, because leaving felt like betrayal, because surely someone who had cried with her through her darkest nights could not possibly be someone she needed protection from. It was not until Naomi began praying specifically for discernment, not for an answer, not for a decision, simply for the ability to see clearly, that God began revealing the pattern she had been too close to notice. The friend was not evil. The friend was empty, drawing life from Naomi's pain and quietly resenting Naomi's joy. And once Naomi saw it, she could not unsee it, and slowly, gently, without bitterness, she began creating distance that protected both of them from a friendship that had never been mutual to begin with. What makes this kind of person so difficult to identify is that they rarely feel like a threat in the moment. A threat that announces itself is easy to avoid. Nobody walks willingly toward danger they can clearly see. The strategy that actually works, the one that has worked for as long as human relationships have existed, is the strategy of slow erosion, not sudden attack. It is far easier to drain someone gradually, one small comment, one small favor, one small moment of feeling slightly less than you were before, than it is to harm them all at once, because gradual erosion does not trigger the alarm bells that sudden harm would. You do not notice a single drop of water wearing down a stone. You only notice the stone after years have already passed, and by then the damage has already reshaped something that used to be solid. This is why so many people stay in draining relationships for years without understanding why they feel so exhausted, so unlike themselves, so uncertain of their own worth. They are not looking for one dramatic betrayal. They are living inside 1,000 small ones, each one small enough to explain away, each one small enough to forgive without much thought, until one day they wake up and do not recognize the tired, doubting version of themselves staring back in the mirror. If you're sitting there right now, and a specific face just appeared in your mind, do not push it away. God is not asking you to confront that person today. He is asking you to simply acknowledge what your spirit has already been trying to tell you for months. But before we go further, I want you to do something for me. If this message is landing on you right now, type the words "I received this" in the comments, not because I need to see it, but because there is something powerful about declaring truth out loud, instead of only feeling it silently. And stay with me, because the second sign is even harder to detect than the first, and it involves someone whose intentions might not even be malicious, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. The second sign is the discourager, and this is the one that breaks the most hearts, because the discourager is rarely a stranger. The discourager is often someone who genuinely loves you, someone whose intentions are not cruel, but whose fear has quietly poisoned their ability to celebrate the parts of you that are growing beyond what they are comfortable with. You know this person, because every time you share a dream, they find the one flaw in it before they find the one thing worth celebrating. Every time you talk about a calling on your life, a business you want to start, a ministry you feel led toward, a relationship that finally feels right, they respond with a version of caution that somehow always leaves you smaller instead of stronger. They are not trying to destroy you. Most of the time, they are terrified of being left behind by the version of you that is emerging, and so without even realizing what they are doing, they pull at the threads of your confidence just enough to keep you close, keep you familiar, keep you exactly where you have always been, because your growth threatens something in them they have never had the courage to name. There is an old story of a man who set out to rebuild something that had been broken for generations. A wall around a city that lay in ruins, and the moment he began the work, voices rose up around him, not from enemies charging with weapons, but from mockers standing at a distance, laughing, asking what such a feeble effort could possibly accomplish, insisting the work was too big, too foolish, destined to fail before it even began. He did not stop to argue with every voice. He did not waste his strength defending his calling to people who had already decided not to believe in it. He simply kept building because he understood something that so many of us forget when we are surrounded by discouragement, disguised as concern. Not every voice that speaks into your life has been given permission to shape your future. Some voices are simply too far from the vision to understand what it costs to build it, and their opinion, however loudly it is spoken, was never meant to carry the same weight as the calling God placed in your spirit long before that person ever spoke a word. I want you to notice something about the discourager that most people miss. They rarely discourage you about everything. That would be too obvious, too easy to spot. Instead, they discourage you very specifically about the one area of your life where you are closest to a breakthrough. If your dream is starting a business, they will suddenly become an expert on every reason businesses fail. If your dream is a relationship that finally feels healthy, they will suddenly remember every story of a relationship that ended in heartbreak. If your dream is deepening your walk with God, they will suddenly have jokes about people who take their faith too seriously. That the discouragement is never random. It is aimed, whether consciously or unconsciously, at the exact place where your growth would require them to either grow alongside you or be left behind. And most people choose comfort over growth, even when it costs them a relationship they claim to value. I want to pause here for a moment because I know some of you are already thinking of a parent, a sibling, a lifelong friend, someone whose discouragement never once felt like an attack. And you're wondering how something that has always felt like love could also be the very thing holding you back. This is the part of the message that requires the most maturity to receive, because the goal here is not to villainize the people who discourage you. Many of them have no idea what they are doing. Many of them are simply repeating the same limitations that were spoken over their own lives decades ago, passing down fear the way it was passed down to them, believing sincerely that they are protecting you from disappointment, when in reality, they are protecting themselves from having to watch you succeed at something they once gave up on. Understanding this does not excuse the discouragement, but it does change how you respond to it. You are not fighting an enemy. You are gently, firmly refusing to let someone else's unhealed fear become the ceiling of your own life. There is also a second layer to this sign that is worth naming clearly because it does not always look like direct discouragement. Sometimes it looks like conditional support, the kind of encouragement that only shows up once your dream has already proven itself successful. Once there is no risk left in believing in you, once the outcome has already been decided by everyone except the person who is now suddenly your biggest supporter. Watch for the difference between the people who believed in you while you were still unproven and the people who only found their enthusiasm once your success made it safe to claim closeness to you. One of those groups deserves your trust, the other deserves your discernment. Stay with me, because everything I have told you so far was preparing you for the third sign. And this is the one that will require the most courage to hear, because it is not about a coworker, not about a distant friend, not about someone on the edges of your life. This is about the person closest to you, the one who has earned the deepest trust, the one whose betrayal would not just wound you, it would shake the foundation of everything you believed about loyalty itself. There is a moment in Scripture that has echoed across centuries, a final meal shared among close companions, where one man reached into the same dish as the one he was about to betray. Not a stranger, not an enemy standing at a distance with a weapon raised. A friend. Someone who had walked beside him for years, who had eaten at his table, who had been trusted with responsibility and secrets and closeness that few others were given. The betrayal did not come from outside the circle. It came from within it. And that is precisely what made it so devastating, and precisely why God is drawing your attention to this pattern today. The deepest wounds in your life will rarely come from people who never had access to you. They will come from people you let in, people you trusted with your heart, your plans, your vulnerabilities, because only someone who has been given that kind of access has the power to cause that kind of damage. I need you to hear this next part carefully, because I'm not telling you this to make you afraid of everyone you love. I am telling you this because God does not want you blindsided. He is not showing you this sign to destroy your relationships. He is showing you this sign so that when the moment comes, and for some of you it may already be unfolding right now in ways you have not fully let yourself acknowledge, you will not be caught completely off guard. You will recognize it the way you recognize a storm gathering on the horizon long before the first drop of rain falls, and you will have already begun preparing your heart, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with the kind of grounded peace that comes from having already given the situation to God before it fully arrives. There are small signs that almost always appear before a betrayal fully reveals itself, and I want you to hold these close, not as accusations against anyone specific, but as tools of discernment you can quietly carry with you. Watch for the person who suddenly becomes strangely interested in details of your life that have nothing to do with them. Watch for the person whose loyalty seems to shift, depending on who else is in the room. Watch for the person who defends you passionately to your face, but grows suspiciously quiet when others speak against you behind your back. Watch for the subtle inconsistency between what someone says about their commitment to you and what their actions actually demonstrate over time. Because words are cheap and anyone can speak loyalty, but very few people are willing to live it out when it costs them something. If you feel your heart racing right now, if a name has surfaced in your mind that you have been trying not to think about, I want you to take a breath with me, because what I am about to say next is the entire reason this message exists. None of this was given to you to leave you anxious. It was given to you to lead you back to the only place true security has ever existed, which has never been in the loyalty of another human being, no matter how much we wish it could be. People will disappoint you. Even the most loving people in your life will fail you at some point, not always through malice, but through the simple limitation of being human. If your peace depends entirely on no one ever betraying you, you will spend your whole life anxious, because that guarantee has never existed for anyone, not even for the most beloved figures in history. What can exist, what God is offering you right now in this very moment, is a peace that does not depend on the perfect loyalty of people, but on the unshakable loyalty of the one who saw this coming long before you did, and who has already made a way through it. Here is what I want you to do in the coming days, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Begin praying specifically for discernment rather than for answers. Because when you pray for an answer, you tend to hear what you want to hear. But when you pray for discernment, you open yourself to seeing what is actually there, even when it is uncomfortable. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with people, not just what they say to you, because feelings are not always accurate, but consistent patterns of feeling drained, small or anxious around a specific person over a long period of time are rarely something to ignore. Set gentle boundaries, not walls. Boundaries, because a boundary protects you without requiring you to hate anyone. And it allows relationships that are healthy to remain close, while relationships that are draining are given the space to either heal or fall away naturally. And most importantly, resist the urge to confront everyone the moment you sense something is wrong. Wisdom moves slowly and carefully. Fear moves fast and destructively. Let God confirm what He is showing you before you act on it. Because sometimes what feels like a warning is simply an invitation to pray more intentionally for someone, rather than to distance yourself from them entirely. I think of another story, this one more recent, about a man named Elias, who spent years building a small ministry alongside someone he considered a spiritual brother. They traveled together, prayed together, built something meaningful together from almost nothing. Over time, Elias began noticing that decisions were being made without him, that funds were being handled in ways he was never shown, that his brother's explanations for small inconsistencies always seemed just convincing enough to silence his questions, at least for a while. Elias did not confront him immediately. Instead, he prayed, quietly, consistently, asking God for clarity rather than for permission to be angry. Months later, the truth came out fully, painfully, in a way that confirmed everything his spirit had been trying to tell him long before his mind was ready to accept it. But because Elias had spent that season in prayer instead of denial, he was not shattered when the truth finally surfaced. He was heartbroken, yes, but not destroyed, because God had already been preparing his heart, strengthening him quietly in the background, long before the public unraveling ever happened. That is what discernment does. It does not always stop the pain from coming, but it prepares you to walk through it without being consumed by it. What I find most remarkable about Elias's story is not the betrayal itself, painful as it was, but what happened in the year that followed. He did not become bitter. He did not swear off trusting people or close himself off from ever building something meaningful with someone again. Instead, he became more discerning, not less open. He learned to notice the difference between someone who wanted closeness with him and someone who wanted access through him. And that single distinction changed the entire trajectory of every relationship he built afterward. Within 2 years, he had rebuilt the ministry with a small, trustworthy circle of people who had proven their character over time, rather than simply claiming it in words, and the version of that work born out of his painful discernment ended up healthier and more fruitful than anything the earlier partnership had produced. Sometimes the very betrayal you are dreading is not the end of your story. Sometimes it is the exact door God uses to remove something that was never meant to carry you into the next season of your life. I want to speak directly to whoever needed to hear this today. If you are the one who has been sensing something is wrong and doubting yourself for noticing it, stop doubting yourself. You are not paranoid. You are not overreacting. Your spirit has been given a gift, and that gift is the ability to sense what your mind has not yet fully processed. Honor that sense. Do not silence it because it is uncomfortable or because the person involved has been kind to you in other ways. Kindness and harm are not mutually exclusive, and the presence of one does not cancel out the reality of the other. And if you are someone who has just realized uncomfortably that you might be the one causing this feeling in someone else's life, let this be your invitation to examine your own heart. Honestly, because it is never too late to change the direction of a pattern before it fully takes root. Before we reach the end of this message, I want to address something that many of you are silently carrying, the guilt that comes with even considering that someone you love might be part of what God is warning you about. That guilt is real, and it is understandable, but I want you to release it right now. Because discernment is not disloyalty. Recognizing a pattern in someone's behavior is not the same as condemning their entire character. You can love someone deeply and still acknowledge that a specific relationship or a specific season of that relationship is not currently safe for your heart. Jesus himself loved the one who would betray him. He washed his feet the same night he knew what was coming. Love and discernment were never meant to cancel each other out. You can hold both at once, releasing someone to their own journey while protecting your own heart from being wounded by choices that were never yours to control in the first place. There is one more thing I need you to understand before we close, because it is the most important truth in this entire message. Being warned about someone does not mean you are destined to be destroyed by them. It means you have been given the chance to walk into this season with your eyes open instead of closed, which changes everything. The people who are wounded most deeply by betrayal are usually the ones who never saw it coming at all. But you, today, have been given something rare. You have been shown the pattern before the full picture unfolded. That is not a curse. That is protection wrapped inside discomfort. And if you respond to it with prayer instead of panic, with wisdom instead of bitterness, you will walk through whatever is coming stronger and more grounded than you were before this video ever started playing. Before you go, I want you to do something. If any part of this message spoke directly to a situation in your life, whether it was the charming wolf in sheep's clothing, the discourager who has quietly been shrinking your dreams, or the closer, harder truth about someone you never expected, comment the word chosen below, because that word is a declaration that you are not walking through this blind anymore. Share this with someone you believe needs to hear it too, because someone in your life is sitting exactly where you were sitting a few minutes ago, sensing something is wrong and too afraid to admit it out loud. And if you want more messages like this one, delivered the moment they are meant to reach you, make sure you are subscribed, because I believe today was not the last time God is going to use this space to speak directly into your life. You were meant to see this today. Nothing about it was random. Walk forward with your eyes open, your heart protected, and your trust placed exactly where it has always belonged, not in the perfect loyalty of people, but in the unshakable faithfulness of the one who saw all of this coming long before you did, and who is already working every piece of it together for your good. Whatever this season holds for you, whatever names surfaced in your mind while this message was playing, know that you are not walking into it unprepared, and you are not walking into it alone. Every hard thing you have ever faced, you have faced it and you are still here. Still standing, still capable of loving deeply, even after being hurt deeply. And this season will be no different. Let this be the moment you stop apologizing for your discernment and start trusting the quiet warnings that have been trying to reach you for far longer than you realized. Peace was never meant to come from controlling every person around you. It was always meant to come from knowing that you are held by someone who never sleeps, never looks away, and never lets a warning reach your heart a single moment too late.